Hey, welcome to Our Modern Heritage, the Home and Family Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Chafee. In this episode, I have with me today is Mark Delaney. Mark and his wife, Adena, are the founders of My Life platform. They create programs that help people lead purposeful and powerful lives. Their passion is to see people cultivate great love and great purpose within their own homes. Welcome, Mark. So excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited for another conversation. I love conversations.
Me too. This is going to be awesome. And I'm excited because I see that word cultivate in your introduction, first of all, which is an amazing word that has to do with family culture. But also, I just want to know, where did you get started on this journey? What made you think that about this calling or this purpose? How did you find this passion to help seeing people to cultivate that great love and purpose in their homes?
Yeah, I think it's been more so the result of our life that's come about in the last 3 years. We have always been, my wife and I have always been in the people building kind of business. A lot of time in education, people, adults down to 5-year-olds. We raise our own 3 little kids that are now empty nest. We're now empty nesters. They're out of the house and they're launched. Being in education so many years, and you see over the years ways that people really get it right. And you see ways that people who really want to get it right do things that really kind of drop the ball, and it's heartbreaking. And so, to be 49 years old and to look back at life and all the experiences and all the, hundreds of families that we have basically studied, and to see the simple things that people do right that cause them to build a legacy. At the same time, see the simple ways that we hijack our own legacy. Most people just need simple shifts. We tell people all the time with family that all families struggle, but there's a big difference between struggling in the wrong direction versus struggling in the right direction. If you take a road trip somewhere and it's going to be 9 hours, like that's a struggle. You got kids in the car and you're driving 9 hours somewhere. That is a struggle. I don't care. But if you find out 4 hours in that you were going the wrong way for 4 hours, that's a whole different struggle. And so anyway, we love family. We love purposeful living. And so everything we've done with our life, and now we're just doing it in a different way. Yeah. We're just finding ways to help people engage in their life with great love and great purpose. I think most of life is extracurricular, but things we should never live without is powerful love and meaningful purpose. So that's what we help people cultivate in their lives.
That's so awesome. I love that you use the analogy of a road trip, because that's what I use all the time for how we navigate our family culture. And you're so right that we're on this journey together as families. And what would it be like to get halfway, a few years into it and going, wait a second, going in the wrong direction? But I like what you're saying, that you can struggle in the right direction or you can struggle in the wrong direction. And that's a really interesting point, because regardless, it's going to be a struggle. Like you said, getting in a car road trip with children, you're going to have instances where it's a struggle. But what does that mean to you to struggle in the right direction?
Yeah. See, this is where people need to have the willingness to have conversations with people, because sometimes other people in your life can simply help you see if you're struggling in the right direction or wrong direction. A man last night called me. He's probably 30 years old. His oldest son is 3. And he's really just struggling with some stuff. As a man, he's a great guy. He's a great husband. He's a great father, but he feels like he's really missing it. And one thing he mentioned, he said, my 3-year-old, he is just, when he doesn't get his way, he is just throwing a fit. And I said, listen, first of all, you're doing great as a dad. You know why? You notice this problem. I said, ineffective parenting is when your kid doesn't throw a fit when they don't get their way, because you just always give them their way. Like, let's avoid the fit. Yeah. That's ineffective parenting. The very fact that you don't give your child their way all the time and it causes them to have a fit, like that's one of the biggest battles of parenting. Okay, so now you just come up with a simple phrase to say and a simple discipline to how to deal with this situation, and do it about 20 times in a row over the next 10
At
days.
least.
And guess what? Eventually, that stubborn child who has a lot of leadership ability, that's why they're stubborn,
Mhm.
eventually they're going to change a little bit. They're going to learn. So I told him this exact thing. I said, you're struggling in the right direction. The fact that your 3-year-old wants his way when he doesn't get it, he has a fit. That's called a 3-year-old who someday wants to be a leader. So this is a good
Wow.
struggle, face it. But the problem comes is when we as parents, our kid has some kind of issue and we're like, oh my gosh, I have messed up my child. My child something is dysfunctional. I've messed up as a parent. And then we do these things to cause us to really miss it. Like, oh my gosh, my kid's throwing a fit. I can't let that happen. So
Right.
let me just cause him to never throw a fit again. No, let him throw a fit. Bring on the next one. Like next time he doesn't get it, next time there's a choice coming and he's not going to get his way. It's like, oh yeah, Junior's not getting his way. He's about to learn.
Yeah.
So that's struggling in the right direction.
Yeah.
For instance, let's say your child doesn't want to put his toys away before bedtime. And struggling in the right direction is 20 days in a row, it's a battle. And it might take, the first night, it might take 45 minutes. The next night, it takes 35 minutes. And for however many days you struggle, you are not going to bed until your toys are away. That's struggling in the right direction. The wrong direction is you try one time and they won't put the toys away. So, like, you know what? Just forget about it. It's easier if I just do it. Just go to bed. And then for the rest of
Yeah.
their life, mom or dad's putting their toys away. And our son or daughter never learn, you got to take care of your stuff in life. That's struggling in the wrong direction.
Wow. I love that illustration that this narrative around what makes a good parent is not that we're sparing our children the discomfort of
Yeah.
having to take responsibility or accepting no answers or accepting that they need to take care of their things. It's when in fact when we are helping our kids avoid those things, that it's the opposite.
Yeah.
That's the negative struggle, and we're making it harder on ourselves in the long run. And I've heard that called like accidental parenting, where you're like, it starts out with your baby, where oh they're just crying, they're gonna cry, so I'll just cuddle with them until they go to sleep. And then I mean some people do co-sleeping, but I'm
Right.
talking about the kind of parents where it's like, oh it's just easier if I just let them sleep in bed with me. And then you want them to transition to their own bed and you're stuck because you've
Yep.
trained your children that they can get their way.
And 5 years later, it's easier for them if I do their homework for them.
Right.
I mean, that's the track it goes down.
Yep.
That's the track. When we get comfortable with our kid having some pain, uh, we can parent them and they can grow as a person. They can
Wow.
grow. My wife and I were just talking the other day, reminiscing about our life. And like I said, our kids are now 26, 24, and 22. And we were thinking back to probably almost 20 years ago when we had a paper route as a family, which was an outstanding experience, by the way. And on Sunday mornings, we would all get in the minivan. Our kids were probably 5, 7, and 9. And we all had walkie talkies, and there was mainly just an apartment complex we delivered papers to. So we'd spread out in close spaces. We were safe. In the early morning, we're delivering these papers, and the kids loved McGriddles from McDonald's at the time. And we wouldn't buy them for them. They had to decide. They made a little bit of money on this paper route. If we all know, paper routes is a little bit of money. So they got a
Mm-hmm.
little piece of change from the paper route. They had to decide if they wanted to use their payment to buy a McGriddle or not from McDonald's. And now, right now, I have a grandpa heart. I don't have grandkids yet, but my heart is like, oh my goodness, I want to buy my children a McDonald's so they get a McGriddle whenever they want. But I'm so glad back then that my wife and I had the guts and the courage to be like, look, Matthew, Kelsey, Andrew, if you want a McGriddle, you can get one. You have money, knowing that they're looking at this money, realizing almost all of it's going to be gone if they get that McGriddle.
Right.
And like, I'm so glad we were willing to let them go through that pain, because that's where a person develops character. They develop the skills of budgeting, and you figure out, money, and how do I earn money? How am I going to spend it? So many lessons are learned through pain. Once you're okay with your kids having pain, they can grow unbelievably.
And it's not just about like, oh, I'm just going to inflict pain on my kids and they'll learn. That's not at all what we're talking
Yeah.
about. We're talking about like, this is like, with that idea of the money and the McDonald's, that's talking about opportunity cost. And that's the truth. That's a true principle, even when it comes to this idea of good versus bad struggling. It's an
Yes.
opportunity cost. You say, well, I'll clean up their toys, fine, but you're also losing the opportunity to teach your children that lesson
Yeah.
of, you need to take responsibility of your stuff. And now we have issues like helicopter parenting and bulldozer parenting, where that is a road trip that went very awry. And
Yeah.
now we're having to figure out how to correct course, because the opportunity to just appease our children and protect them from feeling that pain has led us down this course of, well, now our kids don't know how to be resilient. Now our kids don't know how to have grit, or how to endure pain, or to take on responsibility or take risk,
Yeah.
right? So it's that opportunity cost of,
Yeah.
what am I actually going to be teaching my children if I choose the easy now versus
Yeah.
the easy or later.
Yeah.
And
Usually,
it's the
as a
opportunity
parent,
cost.
I don't think we have to create much pain at all.
No,
I think we just
no.
allow the natural pain of life, whether it's a teacher they have, or a fight that happens with their sibling or the next door neighbor. Pain just naturally happens in life, just like we all experience as adults. We learn how to navigate through pain. We realize that pain is not this assault that's going to destroy our life. Oftentimes, pain is something that helps us to navigate for the better. And
Yeah.
so when kids learn that, when kids learn that obstacles in life are normal, it's okay, and you just simply use the obstacle to your advantage and you grow in it. The sooner a human being learns that, they are prepared without a doubt.
Yeah. So, how does this translate into being a parent who struggles, like, because it's our struggle too, to watch our children struggle? How does that help us? What is it that you teach or tell parents when you see them struggling? What do you coach? How do you coach them through that pain that we experience as parents, seeing our kids struggle and wanting to step in, wanting to rescue them? What can we do?
Yeah, when a parent has a hard time seeing their kids struggle. My wife and I, we taught in school for years. My wife still does. And you see the progression of human beings. And we watched it from kindergarten through high school graduation and beyond. You see the progression. Now, this is an advantage we had as parents, is we were in classrooms every day with kids. You see the progression of humans, and you see what causes them to grow, and you see what causes them to not grow.
Mm-hmm.
And you see every day the consequences of not growing. The consequences of not growing are just, it's so real.
Yeah.
So my wife and I every day are in classrooms watching kids, and we see the result of not growing. We also know that growth happens oftentimes through facing trial,
Mm-hmm.
going through pain. I think that loving our kids, the best way we love them is by simply helping them understand the world, understand their life, and to take away lessons from pain is anything but loving. It's anything but loving, because our kids are going to grow up and they're going to face who knows what. Right now in this world, we're facing the coronavirus. Who knows what? I'm so thankful that my kids are all right now. This thing is not even touching them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not touching them because of character. That's why. So to love your kids, one of the best things to do is to allow the pain in their life that naturally comes from life, and don't take it from them. teach them how to overcome the pain. When your child was what we want our kids, we don't want our kids to have a pain-free life.
Yeah.
That's not what life is. Matter of fact, pain is one of the greatest things that'll ever happen to us because it pushes us into a corner that helps create in us the kind of life we really want.
Mhm, mhm.
To live a pain-free life is really not a good goal.
Yeah,
A
right?
pain-free life means you're not doing anything that matters.
Yeah.
And a
I
pain-free
think
life doesn't pain-free life creates laziness. So long
mm,
answer to your question, um, to love your kids enough to allow them to face pain, to love them enough to help them learn how to overcome pain. Because when they can overcome, let's call it struggle instead of pain,
mhm, mhm.
if they learn to overcome struggle, they are now an overcomer. And what happens the next time struggle comes? They are an overcomer. So every situation that goes against our kids is probably the greatest opportunity in their life at the time, without a doubt.
Yeah. So it's almost like we our role as parents isn't necessarily a protector from keeping our
Mm,
kids from struggling. It's our role to be their mentor
yeah,
and their support. Like I think that kids are going to be more willing to endure that struggle, knowing not that mom and dad are going to come in and rescue them and then inadvertently send the message that they aren't capable of
yeah,
dealing with that struggle, but that mom and dad are going to be there to fall back on when they need that help,
yeah,
not as soon as we start to struggle, but when we get to a point where we're going, I think I need a little bit of coaching through this, or I need a little bit of
yeah,
direction, that it's our role as parents to wait and watch and be willing to mentor them through those things, but not
yeah,
to swoop in and rescue them, sending them the message, I don't think you can handle this. Right.
yeah,
And then that is something, again, that message that carries with them, that becomes the negative struggle for their whole lives. At some point, they are going to
yeah.
deal with struggle. And whether our role is to prepare them with the confidence to say, I can deal with this struggle.
Yes.
Not the narrative that says, I need mom and dad to swoop in and rescue me because I
Oh,
can't deal with this.
and the what's exciting is your child can learn at some point in life. They might be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they face a struggle and they overcome it. They might just be an overcomer the rest of their life because they overcame something one time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's really exciting, is if you'll do the hard work as a parent of letting your kids struggle and learn how to overcome it. That hard work is not going to have to happen at every point of struggle.
Right.
They're different. They become different because of it. So it's really
Yeah.
exciting. Whenever we do the deep work of character building in our kids, there's years of results that come from it. That's what's exciting. It is hard work to do this kind of stuff, but the results can even be for a lifetime. That's what
Yeah.
we're seeing in our kids at the ages they're in. We're looking back and we're like, my goodness, it was so good to let them struggle. When life brought them struggle, to let them learn and grow. And like you said, we're there to coach or mentor, but to take struggle away from them, no way, no way.
So you talk about great love and great purpose. So how does great purpose come into this idea of positive struggle? That how does that work to
Yeah,
have that purpose out of that? Do you see those? How do those correlate?
yeah. Well, let's talk about purpose for a second.
Yeah.
They're really not a definite connection. It's just two things that are the sweet spot for us in life at helping people with. Uh, in terms of kids, I thought I almost was going to reach across the table one time and have an altercation with a friend over a breakfast table. We were talking about purpose and kids, and he said to me, he said, your kids have always been purposeful. Mine haven't. That's the difference. I wanted to just reach across the table. No one's raised purposeful. You teach them to look at life purposefully.
Mm.
Here's if I could just share uh, uh, one story or visual to parents on how to raise your kids to be visual, to be purposeful, is to simply say this: there's two kinds of people in the world. One kind of person is looking for a bright light to stand under, and they say, world, look at me, be impressed with me, like me, want me, applaud me. This person will wake up every day thinking the world owes them something. This person will be set up for a very futile pursuit, because this can't go anywhere. And now our
Right.
culture feeds that.
Yeah.
Everything is about popularity and likes.
Hmm.
There's a second kind of person, and that's the kind of person that realizes there's a light within them. But that light within them is for shining upon the world. So every day that person wakes up and they say, I've got something to give my world. When a person becomes like this, everything they do is different.
Hmm.
Everything they do is different. Every room they walk into, every experience they have is not me, but what can I give, give, give?
Yeah.
And that is the foundation of purposeful living, is that my life is not about me, but there's something powerful within me that I can give my world. And I am convinced, I see it all the time, that young kids can have this paradigm shift, and it causes them to live differently. But as long as they're person number one, and this is a great discussion to have with kids, it's a very
Hmm.
simple thing to describe to kids. What kind of person are you? What kind of person do you want to be? And they can begin to look at their world, and they can start to see the difference. They can start to see people that are just always looking at the world through, hey, everyone look at me, love me, want me, take care of me. But I am convinced that when a person realizes that their life can make a difference in the life of someone else's, the kind of almost adrenaline rush that comes from that, the passion that builds, that gives someone a reason to live.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the, we talk about purpose with people that are 60 years old, and we talk about it a lot with like high school seniors. And then we're creating content right now for parents on how to help their 12-year-olds with it.
Wow.
Because I tell you, the way a person is oriented toward the world will change everything they do.
Hmm.
If they are person number one, everything is looked at from a me perspective. Person number two, they look through everything as what can I give perspective. And I
Hmm.
am convinced that when a person realizes they have something within them to give their world, they live differently in everything that they do.
Wow. Yeah. Can I make an observation too about that?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
when I was, talking about purpose, and then I love that this whole like there's a me type of person that feels like they are owed the world owes them something.
Mm-hmm.
And just before that, we were talking about struggle and how if we come in as parents and swoop in and rescue them, it's almost like we are sending them that message
Yep.
that they're owed, like they deserve to be rescued,
Yeah, this
or
shouldn't be
the
happening to
world owes
you.
them to me, something to me. And so it's almost like I can see like this it can go hand in hand, this idea that when children are allowed to struggle, it helps them to discover themselves and what they're capable of,
Yeah,
and then it allows them to see, well, I have a purpose, and I can struggle through that, the struggles that come along with knowing this purpose, and that I have purpose in the struggle, that there's
yeah,
meaning in overcoming that struggle because I have a purpose. And so
absolutely.
that's, when I talk about family culture and how it's like, yeah, we're on that road trip and we have the destination we were going, we got to know where that destination is,
Mm,
because then that gives you a hope and a vision and like a desire to go work through those struggles to get to that
mm,
destination. Right? Like
so true.
it's having a purpose that gives you a direction, and it gives you reason to fight for
Yeah.
your
And
purpose.
if you don't have purpose, purpose is something within you that drives you. If you don't
Mhm.
have purpose, you'll look for anything outside of you to excite you.
Interesting,
And,
yeah.
and by
Yep.
anything. And there's exciting lights out there everywhere for people to get entranced by.
So true.
Right now, an example I would give is that, so we're facing a crisis in the whole world right now with the coronavirus.
Mhm.
And there are people that are saying we need to help our athletes with mental health right now because their season just got cut short. They're not having their tournaments. They no longer have a team. They don't have practices. There's no more roar of the crowd.
Yeah.
And though I agree with all that, what we don't notice has been happening for a long time is the same dynamics happen in a child's life whenever their career comes to an end. Even if it happens naturally at the end of their high school career or after 1 year of college baseball, they have the same crisis happens in their life. It doesn't matter if it's the coronavirus or just the end of their career in a different way. The crowd's no longer there. I no longer have a uniform. I no longer have a team. There's no more practice. What am I? And
Wow.
what happens for so many kids, because I deal with the fallout on my end. I'm meeting with the 20-year-olds and 22-year-olds who are meeting with me, and they say to me, I feel like I'm in a midlife crisis. And I
Mhm.
totally get it, because from 5 years old, all they were a baseball player. And they say it out of their mouth. They said, I played baseball my whole life. That's all I know. Or football, whatever the sport is. And it's all they do. It's all they know. It's their sense of purpose.
Mhm.
And then at some point, it abruptly comes to an end. And it doesn't matter when it comes to an end. Even if you blank it to the NFL and you're 42 years old and it comes to an end, you're left with, wait, what? What am I? Who am
Yeah.
I? And this is one reason why there's a huge epidemic among 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds who are turning to things like opioids.
Mhm.
I talked to a 25-year-old just yesterday. He said, when I played high school basketball, the rush of the roar of the crowd was everything. He said, opioids gives me that.
Wow.
Marijuana gives me that.
Mhm.
And so, but here's what I believe. Purpose gives you that.
Yeah.
Purpose gives people this inner drive that I don't have to have some outside substance to drive me or move me. There can be something on the inside of me. That's why we are so passionate about talking about purpose with people. People can know their purpose. They can know it clearly. They can be bold about it. They can know it when they're young. They can figure it out when they're old, and it can drive people. But my heart breaks because just recently met with a 22-year-old who spent his entire life in private school. He was a typical athlete. That's his thing. That was basically his identity. It almost has to be, because if you invest hours every day for years playing a sport, how's it not your identity?
Yeah, right.
How is it not the core of who you are? But at some point, whether it's the end of high school or after some college, the world says, hey, we really don't need you to play ever again. And in that
Sad.
moment, the
Yeah.
basically what happens in that moment
We don't
is,
need you anymore.
yeah, like, and you know what else is the basic message? The silent message is, no one cares that you ever did play. No one cares. I mean, oh yeah, grandma and grandpa do, mom and dad do. There's pictures. There's these little ribbons and trophies in your former bedroom. But what does that do for you now? Are you 23 years old and you carry around your ribbon or trophy? Look what I did when I was 17. No one
Right.
cares. And so these kids at these young ages face this tremendous crisis that who I was for years is now nothing, and it's completely over. And this 22-year-old I met with, he was in a situation where he couldn't get up and go to work in the morning because he stayed up all night gaming and doing Adderall and alcohol. He wasn't bathing. He wasn't grooming himself.
Right. Wow.
And his dad reached out to me. I met with him. He said, I feel like I'm in a midlife crisis. And I totally get it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everything he's done in his entire life came to a screeching halt and no longer matters. And he says, who do I am? The good news is, when people find their purpose, and it can happen quickly, uh, people have something on the inside of them. I got to
Yeah.
tell you something. For young men, especially, who grew up playing sports their whole life, and all of a sudden it just comes to an abrupt end, I can't blame them for doing opioids or marijuana. I don't recommend it.
Right.
But they're looking for something to give them something on the inside of them, to feel the rush of I matter, or there's something in me that's alive. Purpose brings people alive. The good news with that 22-year-old young man, a year later he was walking down the aisle getting married, and he had purpose, and it changed everything. Just a couple conversations changed everything. So
Wow.
when it comes to purpose, like the process we do, it's 3 meetings.
Hmm.
We have 3 conversations with people, and in the third meeting, they say the purpose of their life. It's like a
Wow.
defibrillator that just brings them to life. Because oftentimes in our conversations, we find that the reason people don't know their purpose is because they're simply looking in the wrong direction.
Hmm.
They're asking the question the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to have purpose. And I tell you, when I talk about the visual of person number one with the light, and person number two, the light on the inside of them, it's that simple. With that simple concept, we can teach to a 5-year-old,
Hmm.
and then show them how to live that life out. And they eventually, I'm telling you, the world makes us all think that unless I'm standing under a bright light and there's a huge crowd applauding me, that I'm missing it. It
Yeah.
feels that way.
Yeah.
But the truth is, when a human being realizes there is something in me that can make a difference in my world, there is no greater adrenaline rush than that. And that will get you out of bed. And that can cause a young man to stop doing Adderall. That can cause a young man to stop drinking alcohol, because they no longer have a need for an outside rush, because purpose gives you an inside rush. I'm telling you, it
Yeah.
makes you different. There's a great story from the Bible about Daniel. Daniel was a young man who basically had a type of college experience, leaving home and going off to college. He had, and it was a little bit different, but basically he was faced with great opportunity, great persecution,
Hmm.
great temptation. And he became the powerful leader he eventually became, because when he was faced with all that, the story in scripture says that Daniel purposed in his heart. He had a purpose. And when a person has purpose, it changes how you live. I get really excited. Let me give you a secret of something I've learned. It's not a
Okay.
secret, it's just something I've observed over the years. When I sat in classrooms for day in and day out for years, I would look at students, and you would look at those students who really get it. They're not concerned or wrapped up with, they haven't made their life so shallow that all they care about is who likes me.
Hmm.
They haven't made their life so shallow that all they care about is that their shoes don't crease when they walk. They care about things that matter. And when I saw those kids and I saw that look in their eye, and you can see in how they live that they just have a purposeful spirit in them, I would always interview those families. Just talk to them. What do you guys do? What are you guys about?
Hmm.
What's your routines? In every one of the stories, let me tell you exactly what I hear in every one of those stories. Something just like this. They would say, one family said, once a month, we go to a horse farm. And as a family, we help disabled children ride ponies. Another family would say, once a month, we go to this area in our city where we go under a bridge and we hand blankets to homeless people. You see,
Yep.
those are things that
Wow.
cause a human being to look at life purposefully. If all we do is give our kids every creature comfort they want, we're going to raise a creature. And that's all they're gonna look at life saying, where's my next comfort? Where's my
Mhm.
next entertainment?
Yeah.
But take a human being once a month for a year or maybe even 6 months and let them help a disabled child ride a pony and see if they don't in their heart decide, I want to live for something that matters. I want to live with purpose. When
Yeah.
a young person, and it can happen when they're young, when a young person decides their life has purpose, they will live differently in everything that they do.
Wow. I love that. I love that it's more than just, I mean, I think we hope that our kids pick up that message when we say you matter, or we say things like praising them or things
Mm,
like that. Um, but it's really that practice of opening their eyes to
mm,
seeing problems or seeing other people struggle, that's when they start to get that inner drive, right? And in fact, sometimes when we praise our kids too much, it backfires
yeah,
and they become that person that just wants
yeah,
to be in the spotlight, right? So that's so beautiful. That's awesome. That's
yeah,
so powerful to be able to give children that insight, and at any point in their life, whether it's just when they graduated high school or college, or leaving their
mm,
professions, to be able to experience, to see there's pain outside of myself that I can do something about, or I can
yeah,
help. That's
yeah.
really profound.
When you realize that your life can make a difference,
Yeah.
you just don't care as much about creature comforts. You just can't. I mean,
Yeah.
and so many, so,
When
but
you see
some,
other people suffering in on the streets, they don't have blankets, and you come home to your warm bed every day. Yeah. you're gonna
yeah,
you're gonna start. Well, I love this discussion too, because you talked about that you like to coach people through to understand their legacy. Well,
yeah,
it's like your legacy isn't those trophies or those
mm,
grades or that career that you had. Your legacy is gonna it's got to come from inside.
yeah. And that's good news. And it
Yeah.
can, and it's just waiting.
Mhm.
It's right there. It's just waiting. Building a legacy is not rocket science. It's not, it's courageous. It takes courage. It probably just takes a couple conversations. We find that this happens all the time. Just recently, we went through the Purpose Mastermind with some young men, and this one young man, probably 20 years old, had a rough childhood. His dad was either not involved in his life or he was um, not a good factor. And he's 20 years old. He left high school. He graduated high school, and he's lived at home with his mom and worked in a factory for 2 years. And he went through this process, and he's kind of a shy kid. And the third week, he came back with his purpose. And I normally don't share anyone's purpose because I don't like to give away kind of what the program, what happens. But I got to tell his story. He's a shy guy. And I'll never forget, he's got a little hat on his head. And he came back the third week, and I said, what's your purpose? He said, my purpose is to raise a family that impacts the world. See, he's going to live different every day of his life
Mhm.
because he has a purpose, not only a purpose that matters, but it's a purpose inside of him.
Yeah.
And what many people do is our life is simply the result of our childhood trouble.
Mhm.
But through a couple of conversations, he realized that his childhood trouble does not get to cause his adult trouble. He can use the childhood trouble and become the person that makes a big difference in the world. And that young man, to hear him say those words, that my purpose is to raise a family that impacts the world. Our purpose is oftentimes threatened in our childhood. It's
Mhm.
amazing. Every time someone says a purpose, you can look at their life and they can see where in their childhood it was most threatened. But what's so powerful is that things that were against us from the get-go in our life can be the things that are redeemed and become the biggest building block of the legacy of our life. I can't wait someday. I want to meet. He said, his name was Tristan. He said, I want to raise little Tristans. And I can't wait someday to see that man with his little Tristans probably at a horse farm, helping disabled people ride ponies. I can't wait to see that day. Anyway, so purposeful living is
Yeah. Well, I
incredible.
love that. I love that story because, talking about family culture, I want to be able to give people the skills to question broken patterns
Mm,
and create new patterns. Like you had this story that this relationship with his dad, and it's like with all of us, we have some kind of story or some
mm,
kind of, history or baggage that we're carrying with us, that it's like, well, where did that come from? Where can we I don't know, not necessarily look for its source, but to stop and go, is this baggage that I want to continue to carry with me?
yeah.
No, I want to create something new. And so to be able to create that new thing, having that purpose and bringing it, starting with us as parents, and then allowing to coach our children into their purpose, it's like so
I,
profound.
I love that you brought that up. In our first meeting, that's one of the things we talk about, the common mindset people have. And the reason people are afraid to answer the question of purpose, one of the common reasons why is we believe I've messed up my life and so I can't have purpose.
Hmm.
That is an absolute lie. What I love is, if here's the great thing. I have found over and over again, people who have faced real heartbreak, real pain, even for years, they can pivot so incredibly quickly, oftentimes with a simple conversation. There's a young man, his name is Tyler, and he went through our group. In the first week, he was your classic giggling 19-year-old man. Whenever you come across men that just like to laugh and joke all the time, it's because they don't want to have a serious conversation usually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, some of us men have a good sense of humor, but when all it is humor, when everything kicks and giggles, it's because there's pain they don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
A friend dragged him into this purpose mastermind, and so he went through it. And in that first meeting, we talk about vulnerability. And I tell you, this thing's like a defibrillator. uh, this a group of guys 18, 20 years old, and we laughed about how we're not very vulnerable. I was trapping them. We're all laughing and giggling about it, and then I say to them, you know, the story in your life that you're afraid to tell, you got 6 days to tell it. And I give them the homework of telling the story in their life they're afraid to tell. He came back the second week and he had a whole different countenance. There was a seriousness in his voice and a look in his eyes that was different. He said, I had the conversation. He said it was so awkward, but he said, as soon as I told my story, and he didn't tell it to a counselor or anyone that could really help him, he just told his story to a human being. He said, as soon as I told my story, I saw my life differently.
Wow.
He said, a year ago, my grandma died. She was the only person in my life that I would have real conversations with. She died. He said, I went to the funeral, but I couldn't get myself to go to the graveside.
Mm-hmm.
He said, after the day I had that conversation and told my story, the very next day I went to the graveside. And he explained what happened at that situation, at that, just in that moment in his life where he became the man that could face his deepest hurts.
Wow.
And then in that same meeting, and he said, you know, my dad has never been proud of me before. Now, most men will live a lifetime with an inner anger and a chip on their shoulder when their dad has never been proud of them, because they'll never talk about it. They'll just live their life with a chip on their shoulder, angry at the world, trying to prove themselves. And someday
Yeah.
they hit this rock bottom. Here he's 19 years old, and he's having this conversation, and he's realizing that his future does not have to be bound by anything that his dad was or was not to him. So Pete, I'm glad you mentioned that. The pain of our past can almost instantly be turned into a redemptive way and be used for good, without a doubt.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those examples and those stories. I just when I listen to it, it's like, I can't wait for my audience to listen to this.
Yeah.
So, we need to be willing to have those conversations and be willing to face those demons in a way that is productive, in that, that positive kind of struggle,
Mm.
and be able to bring them to a place where we can say, you know what, I don't have to carry this baggage. I can move forward with purpose
We don't.
and build that legacy.
But the impulse in all of us is the only thing I can do with my problem is hide it. It
Hmm.
feels
Hmm.
like that's the only answer. But the
Yeah.
problem is, you can't hide your problem without also hiding your gift.
Yeah.
You hide your whole life. You can't hide your problem without barricading yourself from help and from love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone has to crawl into the bush to experience you. It's just not reality that that happens.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we don't have to hide our problems. For many people, if they'll just talk about it with a friend, they can pivot very quickly.
Yeah. And I love it that, just being able to say, like, let's use our purpose to serve people. But maybe before we conclude, what is something that would be your advice for people, um, as we recover from this coronavirus crisis? What would be your advice for people who want to create a solution or want to cope with this or recover from it? What would be your advice?
I think in the big picture, what we're facing in this crisis may be the greatest opportunity of our life, because this crisis, it's causing some problems,
Hmm.
but it's mostly in us personally. It reveals problems that were already there.
Yeah.
People that are now at home with their kids all the time, and it's like, oh, this is just horrible. It's just revealing what's already there. If your kids are driving you crazy, it's probably because there's been stuff going on that the speed and pace and distance of life allowed you to just kind of avoid
Hide it.
seeing.
Yeah.
Same with marriage. People are now around each other more and they think, oh my gosh, this virus situation is causing our marriage to be. No, it reveals what your marriage is.
Wow.
You can't blame the virus for what your marriage has always been. This is just adding the little bit more pressure that's kind of revealing it. But what if
Yes.
this virus also causes us to look at our life and be like, what have I been living for anyway?
Mm.
Have I Am I this upset because I might lose a car? Am I this upset that I might lose or have to downsize in some way? And I understand there's pain in all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what if in the midst of all this pain, we can experience kind of a wake up call to say, you know, I don't think I was really living for anything that mattered anyway. And now I'm just upset that all of my creature comforts are kind of being threatened.
Hmm.
So, what if on the other side of this, me and my spouse and my kids, we just do things differently the rest of our life? What if this virus causes us to realize that we've just been kind of going through the motions and keeping ourselves entertained with all kinds of goofy stuff? What if there's something more to live for? And what if this situation that assaulted the very whole world, what if I decide I'm going to make this the comeback of my life, and that from this day forward, I'm going to live for something that matters instead of dying for something that doesn't matter? There's a whole story of my life I could
Wow.
tell you about where a number of years ago, I was not living as purposeful I wanted. And I was just letting myself go through the motions. And I came to a point of realizing, if I stay on this track, I'm just going to die for something that's stupid instead of living
Hmm.
for something that matters. So I
Hmm.
think this whole situation with the virus, there's there's a lot of pain, and I am sympathetic towards everybody, and I'm dealing with it too. But I think we should all use this for the greatest, really the revitalizing of our own life, to live the
Wow.
rest of our life and do something that matters and make as big a difference as we can.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. That was perfect. And that's a great conclusion to this discussion. I think that, just use this opportunity to reset and get out of cruise control on that road trip, right? Like,
Yeah.
Set a new destination that has purpose and meaning. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So where can we connect with you, Mark, to learn more about your programs or to connect with you on social media?
Yeah, the easiest spot is markdelaney.me. Also mylifeplatform.com. We create courses for parents and for couples on marriage and whatnot. So, and then Mark Delaney on Facebook. We have some groups there you can be a part of where we create content. And my wife and I are bold and crazy intentional about getting involved in anyone's life to help bring purpose and powerful love. Most of life is extracurricular, but love and purpose, we ought not live a day without.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for your message. And thank you for being here to share this with my audience. And I'm excited to be able to share this message. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation.